Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I'm going to do a video on my thoughts on The Matherson Marriage by Ruby M. Ayres. So I have finished reading this book, and honestly, this book was not at all what I was expecting when I started reading it. I think of Ruby M. Ayres as primarily doing a lot of romance novels, and this was like way grittier than a traditional romance novel. This is like honestly, the closest book comparison I can think to this is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. Like, this is a very gritty book. Like, this feels like something like that, like one of the Brontes could have written, rather than being like a love story. Yeah, this book was very like gritty. That's the best word I can use to describe it. And it's just like, I feel like I think it's a how do I describe it? It's very well written for what it is. It's just that my expectations of this were completely different than what it turned out being. And like, I feel like this does a great job of capturing like what living with an abusive relationship would actually be like. Like, this book is wonderful at capturing just like the really terrible stuff that some people like live through or have lived through, like the really tragic situations that some women are trapped in. And I feel like this is also a beautiful piece of work in that it captures like in some ways the lack of opportunities that women throughout many like time periods have dealt with. Like, okay, I think that the book is probably circa 1921-ish, and at that time, at least in England, I don't entirely understand what were the actual divorce laws at that time. So like how like it's one of those situations where it's like, Pansy may very well have been trapped, and even if she could legally obtain some sort of like separation, she may very well have lost rights to see her child. What sort of employment could she have gotten at that time? So she, like, this character was essentially trapped in a really sucky situation. Let me be real here, like, if you're watching your thoughts on my thoughts on the book video, you'll be expecting spoilers, so spoilers for the book. Like, Basil Matherson is someone who drowns puppies, like beats his child, later on beats his wife. He's just a really awful person, and I feel like he also does blackmail, like actual like pay me money or I'll do something horrible, and then he also he's also like emotionally manipulative and does like emotional blackmail and does ultimatums to his wife. It's just a toxic, awful marriage that eventually culminates in him killing his own, like running his own son over due to be generous, reckless driving. It is not entirely clear to me whether he intentionally hit Buster or not. I think there is room for interpretation on that. Like, he might have intentionally been hitting, like, swerved to hit him, instead of away from him. Like, there is room for interpretation on this. Like, he is an absolutely monstrous character. But I think that Ruby M. Ayres does a wonderful job of creating this really, like, this villain character who is still at the same time human. Like, I feel like there probably are men like him alive today, and there probably were men like him alive in like the circa 1920 time frame. And it's just I think that this is a very well written book, and I think it does a good job of capturing like some of the sucky situations that some people live through and stuff. So yeah, I was expecting a romance novel when I started reading this, and so yet it turned into something like something one of the Brontes would have written, essentially. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts on this. And I love like the juxtaposition of like, you have someone of like Pansy and Violet, her younger sister. I love the juxtaposition of these two characters, because Violet, I think, is portrayed as being a lot like what Pansy was 6 years ago, what Pansy was in like a better time before she had been stuck in an abusive, loveless marriage. I think that Violet creates a contrast in that she's still like just a wonderful contrast, both as like a literary device to have like the differences, but also to show like this is like going from her to what Pansy is. It's like this is what beating down on a person constantly does to them. So yeah, and I have mixed thoughts on, for instance, like Lynn Ramsden. Like, I feel like a lot of the novel could have gone differently if he just, like, I don't know. I would categorize him as like someone who, he doesn't always make the smartest life choices. Like giving into blackmail, I don't think that's necessarily a good life choice. I feel like he cares too much about Pansy's feelings instead of like actually doing what he thinks is the right thing to do and stuff. I feel like I would categorize him as like a simp or like a white knight or whatever, where it's just like in modern, like that would be the modern terminology to describe him. I feel like he isn't necessarily like the most strong for himself. I feel like he would be better off if he did what he thought was right instead of doing what he thinks will like save Pansy's feelings, because she's a grown woman. She doesn't need people babysitting her feelings all the time. Okay, maybe Pansy. I would say if Pansy does, it's probably because she is constantly being beaten down from other ends. I don't know what's going to happen to her. I get that therapy probably in this time period wasn't very good at all, period. But it's like, I feel like if she wants any chance of having a happy life, she needs therapy after this. Like, it's awful. Like, I feel bad for her, but I feel like, on the other hand, Pansy is also an extremely strong character because she takes, like, she's someone who constantly is taking responsibility for her own actions. And even though she's gotten herself in a situation where she's essentially trapped, and I feel awful for her, I feel like she's strong, a very strong person for putting up with all the stuff that she has had to deal with and survive through, and still managing to smile until she gets to the point where something completely breaks her. And it's like, I don't know how you come back from that. Like, I feel awful for her. Yeah, I think that the Matherson Marriage was exceptionally well written. Just do not come into it expecting it to be a romance novel. Come into it expecting it to be a gritty Bronte style work. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Matherson Marriage. And I hope that you have a better day than the characters in this book had. Bye!